Roger, sir!
All right, guys. So, welcome to the Roger Sarn podcast where we talk all things Army. And I'm your host, Sarn Cruz. And today we're going to be talking about an article that I found on military.com that's is highlighting more on the officer side, reference to why a lot of these senior officers are taking routes in which they are, according to the article itself. So, I need you guys to bear with me. I got a bunch of notes, got a bunch of screens that I'm looking at. And yeah, so the reason why I want to talk about this today is because, yes, if you are enlisted and you're listening to this, this also pertains to you because these general officers or senior officers and mid level command officers, they all are in charge of us some way or another, right? You work with them at some point in your career. So I think understanding their thought process and why they do the things they do and how is it that they're selected in itself is has a big impact. So just know that when we go through this, you're going to see the rigorous amount of screening that they do with these officers. So let's go ahead and start. All right. So the article is titled "More than half of senior Army officers are turning down command considerations." Now, funny enough, this this guy right there, you can't see my cursor, but this one right here to the left that's accepting that guide on is actually Fullberg Colonel Christopher J. Kirkpatrick. And he was my commander here at 2ABCT on Fort Cavazos. I had got here when he was already exiting. But yeah, it's funny that I chose this article and when I noticed, I was like, oh God, look at this guy. That was my commander. And he's taking command over there in JMRC in Hohensfels. So I mean it's cold out there. That's all I gotta say. All right, so let's get to it. So I'm not gonna read the entire article. I'm just gonna highlight some areas in which I think are important to the article itself. So just like I said, it's gonna talk about this part right here. Let's start with this one. So, more than half of Army senior officers are turning down opportunities to command. So, they're choosing instead the stability of staff roles over high stake demands of leadership or retiring, according to internal service data. Now, I'm not going to lie. Like when you get to a certain point in your career, there's a crossroad. There's a fork in the road. And that happened, like it's happening to me now as a sergeant first class. And I imagine it happens to them as they're moving to lieutenant colonels, going into general. Do they want to make that Fullberg colonel? Do they want to make general? So they at this point in their career, they've been in for 18 plus years. And there's a lot of time dedicated to the Army, to the mission, late nights, and that takes a lot of toll, which is why they say they're choosing stability, right? And then you got the staff roles. Because I'm not gonna lie, if you are a commander, you're expected to pretty much be almost last person out the majority of the time. You're gonna have meetings at 1600 that move into 1700, 1800 meetings. Like you're going to be getting calls in because at this point, if you're a company commander, you got about 100 and some odd people. If you are a battalion commander, you can have upwards of 400 to 600 people. And if you're a brigade commander, at that point, you can have up to 4,000. So there is a big responsibility when it comes to that. And just like it says the high stake demands of leadership, right? Like they're taking the staff roles and some of them are retiring. And that in itself is telling because if we look over, like I found this federalpay.org, and we can look at what the payment is, right? It says the pay grade, it has what the rank is, it has the basic pay range while you're in the Army, and they're going to compare it to a GS grade. And then on top of that, you'll see what the could be equivalent range in the civilian side. So as of right now, like, and you see the low end range for SARM first class, it says 43,499. And those are for your fast trackers. Those guys are going to get a little bit less. And this is just base pay, right? Your basic pay. This is not including all your, if you're airborne, if you're getting any jump, any not jump pay, what is it called? BAH, BAS, with dependence, without dependence. It all depends, right? With dependence, without dependence, it all depends. Yeah. So there's a range, and then it can go up to $78,188 as a sergeant first class. So they're telling you you're going to cap out with your base pay there, depending on how many years. Now the weird thing is when you go to the right and you talk about your civilian pay, that thing drops off massively, like that top range, and they equate that to a GS6. And I'm not gonna lie to you, that's probably entry level, maybe no degree, but I would imagine that when they did this pay scale, they're counting on you having some sort of degree. But that's disappointing. I'll tell you that right now. I ain't working. I'm not. It ain't happening. Not for those little shillings. But yeah, no. I digress. Let me stop. So $44,959 and $58,445 on the high end. As a sergeant first class, if I got out and I took a GS6 job, I wouldn't be able to pay any mortgage. I tell you that much right now. Now we now look, if you even go to the sergeant major, E9, sergeant major of the Army. This is not just sergeant major that you run into every day. We're talking about sergeant major of the Army. You know what I mean? They're at 76, so they pick up where I left off pretty much. 76,44,6, and then they jump up to $118,696. Now, why is it that they're just stopping from sergeant first class all the way up to sergeant major of the Army? They're only saying, you know what, you can only get this GS6 right here. And again, the 45,000 pretty much, and 58,000 and a half. That is, those, you can't. You can't. I'm pretty sure that's wild. But do you see? And this is why it pays. You get compensated, right, for competency. So if you get your degree, or all you guys that are thinking about going OCS, and I will do. Actually, I did a video with it was in season 1 with Captain Shaffrin, how he went from enlisted to officer to, and then flight officer. I'll link that up here somewhere. But yeah, competency gets compensated. You get your degree, you cross over, or you go warrant officer, you cross over, and you're gonna get paid a little bit more. And with the warrant officer, not that much, because if you see the CW5s, it doesn't really do too much outside the Army. Inside the Army, you're freaking killing it as one of those CW5. Even as a 3, you're almost at 100,000 at the top end. And if you retire, your top end is going to be 72,000, right? 72. I'm not gonna lie, it's more than the average American, if you will, especially the average American male. But I mean, 72,000, like after you've been making 80, 90,000 in the Army at a certain level, it's like, man, we got to fix it. So I urge you guys, if you guys are thinking about crossing over, just do it, because when you retire, it's gonna pay in the back end. So let's move down to the O's. We're not worried about lieutenants. We're not worried about captains. We can look at the majors, but that's not it, because what they're talking about is battalion level, or brigade level and division level, because these are the lieutenant colonels, these are the colonels and brigadier generals, those guys right there. So if you look at a light colonel, he's from 80 to 100 and almost $40,000. And when that person gets out, they are going to be at 105 to 137 GS13 off the bat. You know what I mean? So I mean, you're going to put in your time. You're going to put in your time. But if you see, like, their start pay as a GS13 is 105. So their quality of life doesn't change that much. That's the bottom line. That's the takeaway from this section right here. If you think about it, it doesn't really change that much for them. So they get to be home with their families. They get to be home in their home that they choose, state, country, whatever it is, and they're home. And I think that is the biggest determiner at that point. Can I drop my packet? Yes. Will I drop it? let's see, let's go look out, let's see, let's have the conversation with the spouse if you have one, let's have the conversation with the kids if they're of age, right? Like, there's so many factors, and I think this is the reason why this article came out. And I believe this article was written December 13 of last year, so it just came out. It's about almost a month years old now. If we move into the next paragraph, we have the Battalion Commander Assessment Program, which is the BCAP, is a cornerstone of the Army's effort to evaluate leadership readiness, assesses 800 to 1,000 lieutenant colonels annually through interviews, psychological tests, and fitness test evaluations. Right, and if you don't know what it is, if you go to HRC and you just type in the CAP Command Assessment Program, it'll tell you right here. It says the mission of the Command Assessment Program is executed to world class, current, and relevant assessments to provide proven and objective data as the component of the Army's selection to slate the best leaders in the Army's most impactful leadership positions. And that's kind of like the same thing that happens. A real quick side note: same thing that happens with your marketplace. A lot of us, where we don't like the marketplace, we say we can't get what we want, and the reality of the situation is, if I want to go to Hawaii, right, and I want to be the operations and medical operations NCO over there at Tripler, and there's 50 other Sergeant First classes looking at to go to Master Sergeant, going to that same position, they're going to see who is the best fit. And that's why you end up where you don't want to go, because we're not competitive enough. And it's just, it's the best person wins. So just keep that in mind. So the program regularly assesses nearly 2,000 candidates each year through Battalion Commanders Assessment Program, which is the BCAP, and then they have the Colonel's Assessment, the Colonel Command Assessment Program, and Sergeant Major's Assessment Program. And together, these programs assess competitive category soldiers and medical command assessment programs. So this is also for Medcom. So, and then they have civilians participating in the acquisition leadership assessment program as well. So that's just a quick insight of what that is. And if you want to read more about it, there's some links down here at the bottom. Okay, so let's move into this article that was written. This is when the actual BCAT was announced. So Army announces new battalion commander selection program. This was November 6, 2019. So this is nothing new. If you've never heard of it, it's because you're just not paying attention. But I'm not gonna lie. I think maybe 2 years ago was the first time I heard one of my officers say I was interviewed for this position, right? Um, so yeah. So the reason why, so General James McCovell, the chief of staff of the Army at the time, announced that the new initiative to pick battalion commanders at an annual meeting that they had, right? So his reasoning was, we spend more time and money selecting a private to be in a ranger regiment than we do to select what I would argue is one of the most consequential leadership positions in the Army, our battalion's commander. And yeah, think about it. 4,000 soldiers. They're these individuals, like, it's rough. Battalion commanders have it rough. And that's why you see most of them be going bald. Right. So what do? The BCAP consists of physical and cognitive, non-cognitive assessments. So during the assessment program, participants are going to they're going to test on written, they're going to test on verbal communication, they're going to interview with psychologists, so make sure that they even qualify, like, for the mental anguish that they're about to put themselves through. And they take part in a panel interview with senior officers. So the point is that right here it says it. Evaluations. Okay, here we go. So the assessments are used to objective, scientifically valid instruments designed to assess potential. So evaluations, which are subjective in nature, rely on observed of past actions and are used to rank a person against his or her peers, right? So the NCOER, the OERs is what you've done, right? And this is more of like, how will you rank against the Army, as a whole, not just those who are in your small bubble. Because I'm not gonna lie, a lot of times we're like, well, this individual, man, they're high speed. Hold on a second. Yeah, so they're high speed and they do it all, but when you take them outside their footprint, it's like, hmm, these guys are are different. And I think of it mainly because when you go to as a medic, when you go to the best medic, it's it's eye opening. It's eye opening to say the least because you're competing against the best of the best. And then you realize, man, I need to sharpen my skills. So it's really humbling when you step outside your footprint and you get compared against everyone, which takes me back to the marketplace. You're being compared against every, for instance, me against every sergeant first class, and whichever position I qualify for over someone else, that's the one I'm going to get if it's in my preference. And if I, if I don't qualify for much, then I'm all the way at the bottom of the barrel, baby. So that's the way that goes. And then we're gonna move into the next point that I have right here. It says, hold on, let me go back to the screen share. And for those of you who are just listening on the podcast platform, download, leave a review, do me that favor. And if you want to see the articles that I'm going through right now as I'm highlighting, you can head on over to YouTube, Roger Sarnt, and you can go ahead and take your time and see that as well. So here we go. Historically, 85% of participants have been deemed fit for command. Yet, this year, 54% of eligible officers voluntarily chose not to participate. It's a significant uptick from the 40% average opt outs rate seen since 2019. More than half. So it's safe to say that the majority of these O's at that level are opting not to take command. Now, what does that say about the demand? It says a lot because they already know. What does it say about the individual or the 800 to 1,000 lieutenant colonels that actually go through and get evaluated? Those guys and gals really they really got their cojones with where they're supposed to be. You know what I mean? Like they're willing to take the daunting task. So it says a lot both ways. I don't want to concentrate too much on the negative. I'm not gonna lie, but it just things to understand. Another stat that I looked up was from that 40% from 2019 there that increased from a decade before that was at 25 to 30. So in 2019, we go back to 2009, um, and it was only 25 to 30% of those officers that were like, you know what, um, I'm not going to take command, whatever it is that they thought of. But yeah, so let's go to the next portion. The predominant reason were personal and family circumstances, such as retirement eligibility and family stabilization. Major Heba Bullock, of an Army spokesperson, told military.com in a statement. Right. So let me see here what I got. Oh, so I was over here on this website. It's the soldierforlife.army.mil. And this is some of the contributing factors to why the percentage of people who retire. So it says only 6/10 of 1% of Americans are retired from the military. 1 million of them are soldiers. Only 30% of officers and 10% of enlisted soldiers retire. Now think about that. Only 30% of officers. So out of every 10 officers, only 3 of them are going to retire. So this is how you see. So I could imagine like maybe 10 years ago, like I said, a decade ago, before that, 15 years ago at this point, over 15, there was only 25 to 30 were opting out of it. So if we directly correlate opting out to retirement, that means 7 out of 10 of these individuals in this rank of O's were retiring. So now we're down to 3. Like it's a total flip. And it's just a high demand, to be honest with you. It's just a lot to like you when you get in the army, it's a lot to go on to to do it. I don't think I'm not gonna say it's not cut out for everybody. I think if everyone wants to make the intentional sacrifice, they can do it. But I will say that it is here we go. What I will say is oh got the thumbs up. So what I will say is if you want to do it, you can do it. Um, I did it and I'm doing it right now. It's just there comes a breaking point. Like they're put in a position in which they probably have to choose between their family or whatever it is, whatever have you. But it's a big one. And that's the fork in the road. All you young individuals for listening, you guys are gonna come to that fork in the road as well, and you're gonna know exactly what I mean. And every day is gonna be like, oh well, when is the next day? Oh, we gotta let's go to the next day and next day. And you're wanting this time to tick. Excuse me. And you're wanting this time to tick, but at the same time, time is ticking. So you're getting older, and a lot of things are happening. But I digress. Let's go ahead and move to the next section. All right. So in this section it says instead some officers are drawn to staff position, less visible, lower pressure roles that promise stability for the same pay. Those jobs lack excitement of the leading of the troops, but offer something many mid-career officers may crave: a break from the relentless grind. In other cases, lieutenant colonels are reaching the retirement mark of 20 years and have to decide whether they're going to seek the rank of general or retire. So, like I said, the demands when you get to this level, it's astronomical. You got to understand. And the thing about that is it's an expectation, right? You leave early, even when I leave early, I feel like I'm doing something wrong sometimes. But I did make a video in reference to like the called clocking in, the hidden realities of working overtime in the army. And I'll link that over here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But and you got to think about it like if you're a battalion commander and you're the S3OIC, those are two different demanding jobs. Night and day. Even if you're in a staff, you may have a few meetings every now and again that are going to go past your normal overtime hour, but you don't have to be at work until 2000 most of the times. Sometimes these battalion commanders don't get home until almost 10 o'clock at night. Some of them don't get home. I've seen one in particular that would stay the night twice a week, twice 2 days a week. Just stay the night, sleep in their office, go to the gym, take a shower in the morning, same thing in the evening. And and it's like it's an expectation because it's too late to drive sometimes. Sometimes you're just so exhausted from the day and you just crash out. But yeah, you may not have the excitement of having all these Joes under you and have all these first sergeants and commanders and being able to kind of like um mold them and show them the way and anything that comes along with the mentorship of being a battalion commander. But at the same time you get to it's less stress, and I can see how is it that they're electing these staff roles. Like I said, it's the same pay. It's not like you take command and then all of a sudden there's a stipend or something like that. But it's just I I can't blame them because they've given so many years, and as you said right there, some in some cases these lieutenant colonels they're reaching the 20 years or are at the 20 years, and you know with O's is a lot less flexible than us. Like I remember there was a captain back in the day. They had two looks at major, and then they had to get out. So a lot of times with them, they if they stay stagnant too long, they're going to be forced out anyway. So if you know you're going to be forced out, and within that time you're either going to NTC, JMRC, JRC, JRTC, or you're going to Poland or UCOM, PACOM, wherever it is, and you're being away from your family, knowing that you're not going to progress, um, why not just go ahead and start the process? So I can see it. I understand. I kind of understand it. Off the soapbox. All right, let's go to this next part. And this next part is I'm just gonna I'm gonna read it because it has some type of relevancy, but you can go ahead and check on the article if you want to. Okay, so this portion talks about a general who was the former head of the Army Material Command. He was fired back in December for their inappropriately intervening with the BCAP evaluation process. So, long story short, um, let's say I'm that general. I have a mentee under me, and this mentee um, didn't really make the cut because when you go through the BCAP, they give you an OML once they determine if you're even fit for command. They give you an OML, and then you get your orders and do all that, everything afterwards. So they didn't make the cut. They asked the panel or the board to relook at it, and which is something that's not done normally. They did it, and then they relooked at it. They still found that the individual was not didn't cut the mustard, if you will, for lack of better terms. And that individual then was still put on the OML. It create the controversy of somebody told it. It got to the secretary, the army secretary, which is Christine Warmuth. She took care of that, but the the point is no system is a way or is safe from involvement or is safe from someone trying to help someone out. There are ways that we try and help. We always want to pull our people up. We always want to pull those who are definitely close to us up. There are ways to do it, but sometimes when you're in a position, sometimes you do things that are not ethical, if you will, and that comes back to bite you in the long run, and that's what happened here. So the individual got taken off of the OML regardless. That senior officer or that general officer got fired from the position and moved forward. But yeah, that's the long story short on that. Um, I want to go go back and talk about these because I was on Reddit and there gonna be some threads in reference to the command and how oftentimes they're turned down, right? So I'll read these out to you. So Tox Doc USA says, I turned I've turned it down twice now as an O5. I'm thinking about I'm think I'm going to put my name in the list for the last time because family stuff has stabilized a bit. We're in a place where if I get some obnoxious location, my wife could stay out with the kids for 2 years. And then Kinwan says, before you put your name in, do you have a 4-star Gen Daddy who can make sure you're on the CSL list? And that's in reference to the other thing. Okay. And then the next thread says, get that over here. So Mando Fret 117 says, shit, I'm in a company command time right now, and I'm actually looking forward to being a staff B for the last few years I've got before I get out. In no ways does this study surprise me, right? We're talking about because it's in reference to the actual article. And then Crime Dog 58 says, my biggest regret was choosing a branch where only Captain KD was command. Shit is way overrated. So now you kind of see like these guys. I can't verify what they are. I can only go by what they say. But if these individuals have actually been in the command or are these O's, you can see the thought process on the threads. Quarter note 44 says, just imagine you're an O5. There's no war going on. You're staring down the barrel of getting yelled at by an O6 and a 1-star every month because your broken equipment with long lead time parts is still broken. You don't have property, so that's nice, but you still have to worry about several hundred-ish alcoholic 20-ish somethings. You have two different command and staff meetings, two different training meetings, and who knows what else every other week. Or You can just take some random division core level staff job, write out your time, and collect a sweet retirement. Oh, don't sound like a bad gig. But I'm telling you, I'm in staff right now, and my she typically goes to most of the meetings, if not all of them. She's in a meeting almost every other day. Like every day, she's in like a couple meetings a day, and it's like meeting after meeting, and she has to have answers after answers. And sometimes she gets her face blown off. Sometimes she gets kudos. It all depends on how it goes down that day, but it's stressful, and and then she has to deal with me on top of that. So that's it's not no walk in the park. Last one is nerd nerg. I'm glad the article pointed out pay, specifically how many officers would rather complete staff positions than take command and be under the constant stress and still getting paid the same. I'd love to see pay increase or an extra item on the LES if you're in a command position. Why do we think officers leave and go corporate? As a reservist who's completed 3 years of company command, I'd only do battalion if there was a pay increase, recognizing the amount of time, of effort, and time that that position requires. Hmm. Pay increase, some type of stipend, something that tells me, hey, I am in this position, and and this pay is going to be a little make it a little bit better. So the time that you actually get to go out with the family, the army pays it. Um, so Speffer 98 replies, my battalion commander in the reserve were absent, and I'm not gonna read that. That's a whole bunch of people being upset. You can read that on your own. But yes, the article itself it has a lot going on. And the last thing I want to talk about is the last three paragraphs. So separate Army internal Army reports cite work-life balance concerns and scheduling conflicts as significant factors influence career decisions at lieutenant colonel and staff sergeant ranks. So, at those mid career stages, troops often face the dual pressure of heightened professional responsibilities and the demands of raising family, trying to do two things at once. As soldiers rise in the ranks, so do concerns over their spouse's career and issues that peak at lieutenant colonel. Families have long raised concerns that the constant pressure of military life, including unpredictable schedules, long-term missions, and the generally rural locations of many installations, Fort Irwin, make it difficult for spouses to build their careers. Access to childcare has also emerged as a pressing issue, with military-run families facing space shortage, and civilian daycares are costs are soaring. Okay, let me finish. Those logistical hurdles further complicate the decision-making calculus for officers weighing the rigors of command against relative stability of staff roles. I'm going to tell you right now, when it comes to childcare, it's a racket. And that's going to be my next. I think, wow, I want to talk about the CP, the continuous pay that just dropped. You guys tell me, put in the comments, which one do you want? Do you want the continuous pay, new Alarak or meal permessors that came out, or do you want me to talk about the access to childcare and how you can get how the government provides some type of stipend or relief? You guys let me know in the comments. But we talk about work life balance, right? And I'm going to tell you right now, when it comes to work life balance, there's an article by HBR, which is the Harvard Business Review.org. It's on HBR.org, and it's called "Work Life Balance is a Cycle, Not an Achievement." And so the studies show almost 200 in-depth interviewers with 78 professionals from London offices of a global law firm and an accounting firm. So they spoke with an equal number of men and women, and most of the interviewees were between 30 and 50 years old, with at least one dependent child and either a middle or a senior management role. So 30 to 50, one child, and they're either senior or mid level management. And the majority of the interviewees describe their jobs as highly demanding, exhausting, chaotic, and they seem to take for granted that working long hours was necessary for their professional success. They have to do it. Same thing as in the army. So this is outside and inside the army in a whole different country. It happens. However, about 30% of men and 50% of women in the sample appeared to consciously resist working long hours, describing a variety of strategies they've developed for maintaining a healthier work life balance. While the details of every individual case differed, our study suggests a common mental process that consistently helped the group of professionals to change the way they worked, lived, and for the better. So the first thing, so there's 5 parts to this. The first one is going to be pause and denormalize. The next one is going to be pay attention to your emotions. The next one is number 3 is reprioritize. Number 4 is consider the alternative. And number 5 is going to be implement that change. So when we talk about pause and denormalize, this was a quote from one of the individuals. I was working quite long hours. It was horrible. It was a horrible sort of period. And I think for me, that was the key point. I thought, and I'm not doing this anymore. This is ridiculous. So I think from then on, I have taken a real step back. So they thought about it, something happened, it clicked, and then there was like, you know what, I can't keep working like this. Then number 2 is pay attention to your emotions. And this individual writes, you feel resentful and bitter that something that fundamentally isn't in that important to the essence of life is stripping the valuable time and minutes away from you. It's accentuated even more when you see someone who has lost their life or someone who has been told, here's how much time remains on the clock. Deep. Pretty much when you're on your deathbed, when you see someone on their deathbed, it makes you think, man, that was a rough one. Reprioritizing, this individual writes, the more I really understand what's important in life, and it's not really work. It's, understanding that relative importance of work. I still get a lot of satisfaction and stuff from work, but it used to be everything to me. And now it's less than half to me. Then the 4th one is consider alternatives. And this individual writes, and it takes me probably up to now, like my son is now 2 years old, to get to a point where it's evolved into this is how it works, working more balanced hours. And it has taken that sort of length of time, probably longer than I wanted it to, but it's there now. Then the last one is just implement the changes. And then that's when you finally recognize, when you finally know and recognize the priorities and are careful. You carefully consider the option that can help you improve. It's time to take action. So once you realize it, it clicks. It's time to take action. All right, guys. So do me a favor, like, comment, and subscribe on the video. And you can see my social medias right there. Roger Sarnt for TikTok. What is that called? Facebook and Instagram. But yeah, I hope you guys got something really good out of this. If you did, like I said, like, comment, and subscribe, share, turn the notification bell on, follow me on my social medias. And there's going to come a time in your career that you're going to have to make this decision. And I just want you to understand that you're not the only one that has to make these decisions. All right. So without further ado, it's been 42 minutes. I appreciate you guys for sticking by. Remember, you don't have to embrace the suck if you got the right tools in your ruck. I'm Sarn Cruz, and I'm out. Peace.
Roger Sarn.